Good afternoon and hello. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today in our series of immigration webinars. My name is Mo Sayed and I'm an immigration attorney with Offit Kurman. Today's topic is visa options for models, scientists, athletes, and other stars. As you can guess, this is designed towards discussing the cream of the crop, the very high achievers, folks that are determined to be of a very high caliber. And so we'll discuss options for how those people from all over the world can come into the US and live and work here. I want to thank Jennifer Helfand, our marketing manager, for her wonderful assistance in bringing these webinars to you. And I truly hope that you find them useful, and I hope you find today's topic interesting. And if you have any questions, please send an email or use the chat box in the webinar, the GoToWebinar chat box. So today, what I would like to talk about, as I stated earlier, are immigrant and non-immigrant categories for extraordinary and outstanding individuals. You have all, I'm sure you're aware of a recent executive order that we had maybe 2 weeks ago, where there is a 60-day suspension on certain categories of immigrant visas, and I want to clarify some of that because there is some confusion in terms of what is and is not impacted. The recording for today's webinar will be emailed along with these slides. I hope that you do have access to the slides that I'm using, because I will be referencing the slides and using them throughout today's presentation. So if it will be super helpful if you have the slides to open them up as we go through. Okay, so quick update on the executive order, right? So the order was called the Proclamation Suspending Entry of Immigrants Who Present Risk to the U.S. Labor Market during the economic recovery following the COVID-19 outbreak. So the idea is that we have a very, unfortunately, depressing labor market, and that the entry of foreign nationals that will perhaps take jobs here will be to the detriment of U.S. workers. So that's the intent behind this executive order. Now, I personally question whether this executive order really has any teeth, because the embassies overseas are already not functioning. So it's not as if anyone's being granted immigrant visas or non-immigrant visas at the embassies anyway. So, and who knows when they will reopen. So as a practical matter, I personally don't think that anything different happened as a result of this executive order. Some areas actually are positive for our discussion today. So the order applies to people. This is the important point I wanted to make, right? So that this order applies to people who are outside the US, aliens who are outside the US. So it does not apply to folks that are already here, for example, working on a different visa, or that are a student, for example, and they want to change to a different status. They can apply for a green card, or another visa renewal if they're already here, and that's a large number of people that are that benefit that, so that are not covered by this order. Just to remind you, like, the handouts are also available on our, I'm sorry, just a change of topic. The handouts for today are available also on the GoToWebinar portal. And if you go down the handouts, you can, if you're listening in on the web, you can click on the PowerPoint there. It's a PDF. And we are on slide 4 right now. So, and folks that are already green card holders, they already have immigrant visas, they are certainly allowed back into the country. They are not impacted. Okay, so and a few other categories which I'll not get into the details. Now, this is a list of the exemptions from suspension. So you can see there's a list of 10 items. First was the folks that already have green cards. Then there is a exception for healthcare professionals and their families. Now, practically, I haven't really seen this playing out. The healthcare workers are, because the embassies are closed, if they have a green card, or let's say for a doctor, nurse, physical therapist, other allied professional that can show that they're of value to the COVID-19 healthcare process, they are supposed to be able to get visas, but I haven't really seen any being processed. So maybe in the next couple of weeks we'll see them rolled out. And all the way down at number 9 is the national interest waiver. So, and this is something that is relevant to our discussion today. This is one of the categories that we'll talk about. And national interest waivers are exempted from this suspension, so which means that they can theoretically go to embassies and apply for visas if they've got an approved immigrant visa petition from the USCIS. So let's see how that pans out. Don't have much of a track record right now to comment on what is real and what is simply on paper. So the practice and the rule is right now not clear whether there's a match. Okay, so the important thing to keep in mind today is that we're talking about 2 different types of categories. So the first category is going to be an immigrant visa category, which allows a person to live and work in the US permanently once they get their green card or legal permanent resident status. They're not bound to any particular job. They can switch jobs, they can become a student, and their families can also accompany them. Minor children can accompany them. And those are the first 2 categories, the EB1 and the EB2. Okay, and then next is the O visa, which is a temporary visa. So someone can come in, work for a certain duration, get their visa extended if they have a valid basis for doing so, and they can live and work here, but they'll be tied to the O visa sponsor, which will be an employer. Now they can pursue simultaneously along with the O visa, they can pursue a permanent resident status as well if they qualify on that basis. Okay, so that's the big kind of picture distinction. These can again be people that are outside the US, or they can be people that are already inside the US and seeking this benefit. And there's different processes. And at least in the short term, it would seem that getting these processed overseas is going to be hard for folks that are already in the US. They can get these status changes or adjustments approved. So let's talk about the content, right? So the EB1 visa is for a person that can demonstrate extraordinary ability in their field, and the fields are really, they capture almost any area of professional or vocational endeavor. So sciences, arts, education, business, athletics. So you have researchers, you have artists, architects, professors, business people, sports stars, actors. So anybody that has sustained national or international acclaim. Okay, so that's your EB1 category. EB2 is another avenue where EB2 has 3 separate parts to it, and we'll talk about only 2 of them. So, and in fact, the slide EB2 visa for advanced degree, the slide only lists 1 of them. The other 2 are the national interest waiver and the exceptional ability, and those are the 2 that we'll focus on. And I mean, the advanced degree, option is also a good option for folks that have a master's degree or a more advanced degree, and the advantage is that they're processed quicker than other categories that are that have a lower level of expertise and experience and education requirement. Okay, now the O visa is for a person, individual that has demonstrated a record of extraordinary achievement in the motion picture or television industry and have been recognized nationally or internationally for them. This is, again, it's one part of the O visa, and we'll get to the second part of the O visa in later slides. Okay, so let's get into the details. Before I get into this, I want to make sure that it's apparent why these categories are so sought after, and it has to do with timing. Because there are several different options and pathways to becoming a green card or permanent resident holder. And the EB1 is very valuable for timing reasons. Okay, so now we will talk quickly about something called the Visa Bulletin, and this describes the, it's a schedule of the timeframes for processing sort of the different classes of applications, plus some specific country by country time, let's say, projections for approval of applications. And that, I mean, by country of origin, there are certain countries which are processed faster than the others. And so let's look at the Visa Bulletin real quick. Okay, so this chart, it's a monthly chart that gets updated by the Department of State. And what it shows is, if you look on the left-hand side, the column shows employment-based, and that's your employment-based permanent residence, and the categories 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And it goes on to 5 and a couple other categories that are not relevant for our discussion. But what you'll notice is the EB1, if you look at the row there, that's as the EB1, and the first column, the other columns are the areas of origin of the applicants. Okay, so all countries that are not listed on the further right, like China, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, India, Mexico, Philippines, Vietnam. If you're not from one of those countries, then you're in this all chargeability areas. Okay, and so EB1 under the rest of the world, it says current. Okay, which means as compared to the China entry for EB1 says July 2017. Okay, so here you see the advantage that an EB1C from the rest of the world has over a Chinese national. The rest of the world person now can go ahead and file an adjustment of status application, meaning that if their employer hasn't approved EB1, well, EB1 can be self-sponsored as well, so you don't need an employer. But let's say they have an approved immigrant petition. To get to their second stage, which is known as the adjustment of status or consular processing, which is getting the green card for an embassy. Adjustment of status is getting the green card from within the US. These people whose dates are C for current, they can apply right away. They can submit both these petitions together, and let's say within 5-6 months, or max a year if there's a lot of delays, they can have their green card in hand. Okay, but somebody with a July 2017 priority date, or like with a this Visa Bulletin showing July 2017, means that there's about a 3-year delay, right? So they're right now processing July 2017. And so this person has to wait 3 years, and the Indian national has like 5 years to wait. Okay. However, the EB1 is the best and fastest big category. If you keep going down the chart, you'll see that there are even more delays there, right? So EB2 for India, like that's 11-year delay. They're in 2009 right now, right? So that's why you see why this EB1 is so valuable So like if you're from India or China, this is your quickest way. Otherwise, you gotta wait like 11 years, 5 or 6 years, and then the numbers keep also being adjusted every month, right? So EB1 is very attractive for this reason, that it's a quick process. If you meet the deadlines, I mean if you meet the criteria, you are in good shape. Okay, so that was my explanation of the priority dates and the visa bulletin. If you had any questions about this, please send me an email. It's not a very intuitive thing to grasp, but it is very important. Okay, so and here's where we start getting into the meat of our conversation about the EB1 A and EB1 B. All right, so the USCIS website I always recommend, even though the general impression is that the government websites are not super helpful, but in this case, the USCIS website has very detailed information and about the current requirements. So I always guide people, and they have the latest updates. So it's a very reliable and good place to start looking. Alrighty. So EB1, this is the first category, which is the extraordinary ability category. This is the perhaps the most sought after. The reason why it's so important, attractive, is that these categories don't need a job offer. So you don't, a person that has a very high level of achievement, as we'll get into the criteria, they don't have to show that they have a job offer. They can be coming to the US. They have to show an intent to work in that area of expertise, but they don't need a job offer, which is an advantage. As you'll see, the required demonstration is that they have sustained national or international acclaim. Okay. Now, what evidence do they have to show? The evidence that they have to show is the government provides us with a list of 10 criteria, and we have to show 3 out of the 10. Okay. Now, unless this person has a one-time blockbuster achievement, such as a Pulitzer, Oscar, Olympic medal, etc. So like if they're like a world champion karate player, if they have like very, very high degree of recognized medals, then that's going to be, they only have to show that one-time achievement. Okay. Now, you have to show that you will be continuing to work in the area of expertise, which is you don't have to show a job offer, but you have to make a letter of intent. Okay. The real important part is that bottom right piece, which is no labor certification required. Okay. This was a topic of another webinar where for professional occupations or non-professional occupations where that are in the, let's say some are in the EB2, EB3 category, where employers are generally required to show that they've conducted a market survey. They've done a labor market survey, which means they've tried to recruit a person with a stated set of educational and experience requirements, and they haven't found a US worker, and they have to go to the US Department of Labor and then get a labor certification, and then only can they hire this US worker. So the process adds, I would say, almost up to a year in the overall processing time frame, and also additional room for rejection or denial. However, in these EB1 categories, we do not need a labor certification, so which is a huge cost saver, time saver, etc. So I just wanted to point that out, why EB1 is so valuable and attractive. All right. Now EB1B. Okay, so this is more specific. It has to deal with an outstanding professor and researcher, and the slide kind of speaks for itself. So you have to have at least 3 years experience or research in your academic area, and you have to be entering to pursue a tenure or tenure track teaching or comparable research position, and at a university, institution of higher education, or a private employer. So here we have the requirement of a job offer, okay, and it's more specific, and you need the set of criteria is different. You need 2 out of the 6 criteria. Now, you do not need a labor certification, okay? So which is like the EB1A, a nice aspect of the EB1B, okay? So let's get into the criteria, okay? Now, this is the EB1A criteria. So this is the list of 10, and one of the things to keep in mind is that when, let's say, clients come to me, or when we have an interest in somebody to pursue the EB1A, these achievements, they may or may not have them already in their back pocket. They may have achieved all of this, and they come to me with a fully developed resume, fully supported, documented achievements, and perhaps 3 or more of this list of 10, which is great. But sometimes they don't. They may have strong evidence on 2 of these, or they have 2 plus some, a little bit on the others. So I work with them to over time develop a profile that then satisfies these requirements, right? So you need I'm going through the list of 10, and so if you don't have the one big time globally recognized award, you can have a lesser nationally or internationally recognized prize or award for excellence. So let's say a state champion, basketball player, or someone that's has won awards in global chess competition. And then membership in associations in the field which demand outstanding achievement. So these are associations that are by invitation only, or they require a certain level of accomplishment, like a very high level ski instructor. Let's say you're a level 3 ski instructor. I would think that would be something that's that demands outstanding achievement. I mean, that's just an example that I'm throwing out, but it's really pretty broadly defined, and it can be argued based on your peers in those associations. If they have high level of achievement, and you're also in that group, then you can qualify. Publish material about you in professional or major trade publications. So these are not things that you yourself have written. These are things that others have written about you or your work. So this can be pretty broad. These can be, let's say, interviews online, blog posts that reference, the work of this applicant, etc. Next, we have the judging the work of others, either individually or on a panel. So, I mean, this can also take many, many forms. Like you can have somebody that's reviewing grant proposals. You can have, judging on, let's say, an athletic competition. In the lawyers, in the legal profession. I'm thinking of judging a moot court, or working as, let's say, if they're an artist, if they're a judge on some selection panel. So judging the work of others is important, and it shows that you have been invited because of your particular expertise in that area. Now, these are the next one: original scientific, scholarly, artistic, or athletic or business related contributions. This can be an impact through your own work. This can be writing speeches that have been recognized as setting the trends in your particular area. And then you have also a specific section. Now the next one that says authorship of scholarly articles in professional or major trade publications. Then if you can show that your work has been displayed at artistic exhibitions or showcases. And this can again be like a presentation to at a conference where you are describing your work. I worked with an athlete in the anti-doping industry, and she had a poster that she had developed for athletes regarding complying with anti-doping guidelines. And she presented at a conference where she showed this poster, and it was well received among her peers, and that was that satisfied the criteria of displaying at a artistic exhibition or showcase. Now, performance of leading or critical role in a distinguished organization. So this is, again, it's kind of self-explanatory, but if there is a organization that has a reputation and they can state that this person is playing a leading or critical role, that they can't be replaced, without them their organization cannot function, this will meet this criteria. High salary or other high remuneration meets this criteria. So this is for folks that are, by virtue of their expertise, they're getting a high level of salary as compared to others in the industry. And then certainly commercial success in the performing arts. Again, this would be people that have very high level of talent and recognition in their field. So 3 out of these 10, it's on the EB1, it is a high standard, so one has to review these cases carefully and give the individuals a lot of coaching and guidance and point them in towards how they can achieve all these 10. I'll just quickly go over the next set of criteria, and we'll come back to some strategy issues later on. So now, the outstanding professor or researcher. So in this category, we need 2 of the 6, and some of them are similar, they overlap. Pretty much the 6 are selected from the 10, more or less, that we discussed for the EB1A. And so in some ways, this may be easier, like they just have to show 2 of these 6. And it seems that if they're already like an outstanding professor or researcher and they have a job offer from one of these qualified employers, that it would seem that they would already have these qualifications. So for this type of a expertise area, the EB1B is a very sensible option. All right, so let's go. So now the issue becomes then for the individual or employer to figure out what category they put their person in. If sometimes they can qualify for multiple. So you could have an EB1A, which also qualifies for a national interest waiver, and I'll get to the national interest waiver criteria in a bit. In some cases, you have to make a strategy call. Where is your evidence the strongest? Where can you make your most persuasive arguments? Okay. So you can have a EB1A that can also be a EB1B, and so there the clear advantage to the EB1A would be that they don't need a job offer, whereas the EB1B needs a job offer and they have to then work for that employer, whereas that EB1A is flexible. They don't have to work for any particular employer, at least in the sense of like in advance of the application, they don't have to say that they're going to be working for a specific employer. So there's strategic concerns, and we'll try to cover some of them in the next couple of minutes. Okay, so these next couple of slides are designed to really just highlight some of these issues. It's not going to be like a very deep dive. What I am gonna I want to leave you with is the idea that we need, in deciding between the different types of EB1A or EB1B, We have to look at is there a current employer? Is there a current employment situation that needs to continue? What is the specific area of expertise? And then understanding of what the standards are for all of the different types of evidence. So one of the things that I like to do with an EB1A candidate is to ask them, let's think about how we're going to define your expertise. Okay, if it does not clearly fit into a neatly well-defined expertise area, how do we define your expertise? Now, in order to do that, find me 5 or 10 individuals that are in your field that have achieved that high level, the highest level, that are at the highest level in that field. So give me a list of internet profiles or resumes of these people that you're saying that you're like them, that these are folks that have achieved, like if they're let's say a sports analyst or like a data scientist in let's say sports data analytics, where they're advising these huge sports teams on strategy and using technology that's designed to measure things related to the performance of individual athletes. Now, if you are someone that has really achieved extraordinary ability, then who are the 5 or 10 other people in the field that have that? Okay, and compare your resume to their resumes and see you have and what's missing, and then let's work on how to get you what the missing part is. Okay, because it's a high standard. You have to show that you're one of the small percentage who've risen to the very top of the field of endeavor. Okay, and have sustained national or international acclaim. And EB1B, same thing for professors. You have to show that you've achieved outstanding, you recognize internationally in your field, and for that reason, there are some unique issues that come up, and let's talk to some of them. Okay, so what is extraordinary? Which criteria can be acquired? Certainly there are ethical concerns, like in terms of like not making stuff up. What is truly extraordinary versus like, what is kind of just maybe showing off or bragging. So there's a fine line in terms of like, crafting a profile. Certain folks use PR firms, and that's other professionals that lawyers can work with to help in these cases, because it's very useful to look at somebody who is in the very specific area of expertise that they know, like a PR firm might know the field and the personalities and the very sort of be very current on the area of expertise, and they can help to build up the profile, like help guiding the clients towards writing articles, towards getting them engagements for speaking, right? And so oftentimes we're working with foreign nationals that may not know the US side or like the international side. So using outside professionals is always a good idea. Let's see, I have a couple of questions here, so I'm going to try to keep them towards the end. I'll address the questions towards the end. And thank you, by the way, for the questions. Okay, so let's move on. Now, I've touched upon this before, right? So we do get clients that are not yet extraordinary, but they have potential, right? In fact, most of my clients, we spend some time refining, fine-tuning, trying to really craft a case that is approvable. Now, I will say one thing, like these cases, typically when we apply, we will, after some months, get a response from the government that gives a nice analysis of the 10 factors that we're trying to prove. So they'll say that, okay, you submitted out of 10, you submitted evidence on 6. We agree with 2. We need you to provide more evidence on 1 other, right? So then we can really kind of get back to the drawing board and work our evidence, get expert opinion letters, get other evidence, or repackage our evidence in a way that meets the criteria. So these are, in that sense, this is an advantage. Like, you won't get an outright rejection, right away. You get a second bite at the apple, so to speak. Okay. So what I try to do is, certainly I tell my clients that, we to keep expectations realistic, and then work with clients to really understand what they're doing, and understand their worldview, right? And then try to get into that environment that my clients are in, and then help them to pick out the things that most advantage them, right? And pursue things that most advantage them. And then creating a roadmap of some, guidelines or what you may call things that we need to gather, and timelines for application, and a clear idea of like what we're getting into in terms of the application process, because these are serious cases which take some time to get approved. Okay, we do work with experts, so the initial plan is, getting to know the area and the personal story, the personal statement of the applicant, and then identifying experts who are folks that are already at the top of their fields, and that can review my clients and give them endorsements, reference letters from employers, peers, testimonials. They all are useful. The more the better. I like to really lay it on thick in these cases. Like, the more I feel, the better. But quality does matter. So we may have things that can be left out at times. But everything has to be very targeted towards how we define the expertise, right? So let's say I'm working with a lady from India who is a Olympic swimmer for her country, that participated in a relay, won a medal. Her relay team won a medal in the Olympics, so that was big achievement. Plus, she had a ton of like national level and regional level medals. But then she had also achieved a high level of success in the anti-doping field. She had become a sports scientist and was working as a sports scientist in the US, working in anti-doping. And so now we had 2 ideas. We had the idea of her as a swimmer, and then the idea of her as a anti-doping scientist. And so how do we craft this case? She was certainly not coming to the US to swim. She was coming here to work as an anti-doping scientist. So how do we mix those 2 areas that are related and show that she is a superstar? What is she, a superstar swimmer, or is she a superstar anti-doping scientist? And depending on which we pick, we have to show that she's at the top of her game. So making those judgment calls, is important, and you have to see where your evidence is the strongest and how can you craft your expertise in a way that's like, do we want to say woman athlete, swimmer, anti-doping scientist, right? So the combination of skills that we choose is very important. So in that case, we were able to get a successful outcome by really defining her as one of the only anti-doping scientists who was also herself an Olympic athlete and a woman. So it was defined in a way that was like, it wasn't super broad, it was specific. And we got really good letters of reference and expert opinions that supported her, and she got approved. And, back in those days, the Indian category was current, so she was able to get a green card within 6 months. And Believe me, for Indian nationals, that's a huge big deal because otherwise they wait for almost a decade. Okay, so if they're, okay, this is important, accomplishments, not potential. So you cannot come to me and say, hey, I'm headed for greatness. You know, in 5 years, I'm going to be like at the top of my game. No, that will not work. You have to be at the top of your game now, in the present. Okay, now maybe we can use a few, months to work the case and demonstrate, but the letters and the references, they can't be open-ended saying that like this person is very promising, this person has the most potential that I've ever seen. It has to say that this person has achieved already all these things that meet these 3 of the 10 criteria. Okay, so folks that are already on O1 visas, they already have some of these materials collected, and we'll get to the O's really soon. So they can reuse some of the material that they have for their O1 visa letters. All right, so moving on, I am coming close to time, so I'm going to try to hurry up here. So published material, I think that this slide, just look at online profile is very important. Have stuff out on the public domain where people are talking about you and you have written things that is in the public sphere. And the next is what I thought about to share is for artists and entertainers. You have some specific types of evidence, right? So I would say look for social media, Facebook mentions, Twitter, if they have in the past used arts or motion picture criteria, that's going to be helpful on the EB1A side. And you have like some awards that are honorary appreciation awards. And so this is a very specific area, right? Artists and entertainers. So it always helps to consult with folks that are already in that field. Now, for businesses and startups, like this also, will be useful for the persons that are applying as extraordinary ability in the field of business. Then there is a specific set of evidence that is required, and this is usually related to their trade, so their contracts with their customers, and really somebody that's come up with a very genius business idea and had a lot of success, they would fall under this category and be able to benefit. I think we talked about like defining too broad versus too narrow, and this is a very important strategic call, at the outset. So we have to make it easy for the USCIS to approve. So I always like to explain things as if we are, explaining it to a layperson. Now, we use references that are popular, the references that are, if you're like a sports analyst and you've worked with some very high profile NFL players, put that in there. So give the USCIS examiner terms that he or she can grasp and relate to. Okay, so use examples, analogies, because sometimes it's not clear. Like they may have no idea what a particular field of enterprise is. Like if you're a champion in the field of robotics, which is so let's say highly academic and research oriented, they may not know the names you're dropping, but you can use examples that they can relate to make your case stronger. So okay, so let me quickly run through this, right? Okay, EB2, so we move away from the EB1, we come down to EB2. One of them is exceptional ability, okay, and there's criteria listed. You still need to do a labor certification, which means you need a job offer, and your employer has to show that they've tried to hire someone but not found a U.S. worker, okay. This one, EB2, national interest waiver. I wanted to spend more time on this. So it's a neat category. The nice thing here is that you don't need to really, you can self-petition. You don't need a job offer. You don't need labor certification, okay? As long as you can show the criteria uh, warrants a national interest waiver. And um, what you've got to show is that the employment in the US would greatly benefit the nation, okay? And in ways, this is very, for those who qualify, it's a great category to use. Now, for the national interest waiver, you've got your proposed endeavor has to have both substantial merit and national importance. You are well positioned to advance the proposed endeavor. It would be beneficial to the US to waive the requirements of a job offer and thus a labor certification. And they always add other comparable evidence of eligibility is also accepted. Okay, so you have to focus on when we talk about benefit to the US, I mean, if it's work that, let's say, is being done to, treat the COVID epidemic, or is going to advance the interest of a U.S. agency, government-related project. Those often are in this area. You have doctors that are national interest waiver, candidates, and much of the evidence, it can be similar to what the evidence we've talked about earlier. So you look at the past accomplishments of your candidate, their plan for the future, what have they done in terms of progress towards their endeavors, and what interest has the rest of the world shown in them? Like, have they been cited by other authoritative figures in publications and presentations? What is the interest shown by the US government? Do they have research funding and grants? Have they, shown any potential to employ US workers or benefit the economy? You don't have to show an economic benefit, but it's helpful. So that's the NIW category. And exceptional ability, again, we need some stellar credentials that are listed in these criteria here. And why one would do an EB2 exceptional ability over, let's say, an EB2 advanced degree, I think it has to do with the job requirements and the unique educational and work experience qualifications of the individual. So for some folks, this type of position might be more attainable than a EB2 higher education, which would be, let's say, a lawyer applying with a JD would be an EB2 under the advanced education part, and so they wouldn't have to show all this exceptional ability. They would just show their law degree and a law license if the job requires it. Okay, so let's get to the O visas, and again, we're running out of time here. So I think it'll be easy to understand that, like, the O visas are they're short term. They have much of the same criteria that we've already been discussing in the EB1 area. Okay, so you have the O1As, which are individuals with extraordinary ability in science, education, business, or athletics. Very similar to how we defined the EB1A people. And then O1B is for those same extraordinary people, however, in the arts or motion picture or television industry. Okay. Now, why may someone prefer one of this to a short-term visa to a green card? Two things come to mind. One is that the O1s are quicker to process. You can apply and within a few months get an approval, and then if you're outside, go and get a visa. And so you could conceivably, let's say, 6 months, have it in hand. In the current environment, I don't know, like, it's, everything shut down. So you hopefully when things open up, it may even be quicker. Like, there used to be premium processing, and so we used to get responses within 50 days. So the O's will be quicker for an employer looking to have someone come in right away. This is quicker. And even though the criteria is stated in much of the same language, the review given to EB1A is very high. The threshold is very high. We just anecdotally know that the O's do not receive as high scrutiny as the EB1s, right? So, but somebody on an O can be then also preparing for an EB1A, all right? So let's move to the next slide. How you file these things: you file a Form I-129 that the employer does. You need a consultation, which is an interesting thing. The consultation is written by a specific peer group, okay? And these are listed on the USCIS website. So consultation letters need to go with the I-129 form. If there's not a peer group, if there's not a designated organization or trade association, then a letter with somebody with expertise in the area of ability can work. We need a contract with the employer. We need to provide an itinerary when this person is going to come, how long they're going to stay, and the length of the contract. And in this area, you can have agents be petitioners. An agent can be someone that is in a relationship with the employer. However, the agent can be then in a role where they, then the O beneficiary is working for the employer, but the agent is playing a role in actually helping obtain the visa. So that's something unique to the O visa. Here's the evidentiary criteria. And I think this is self-explanatory. It's similar to the EB1 criteria that we looked at, and you have to show 3 of these criteria. Okay, so we've gone through this list earlier, and it's 3 out of the 10. I would take the same approach as I would take for EB1, and provide as detailed and specific evidence as possible. O1B, this is targeted more towards the Academy Awards, Emmy, Grammys, or Directors Guild Awards, and then evidence that the artist is going to be performing in a lead or starring role, and has critical reviews, etc. This slide also discusses the types of evidence which are really unique, to this type of specialization towards acting, and the other O1B individuals. And you need to show that you've got significant recognition, etc., and a high salary. So that's pretty much the O1B. I feel that we need to just kind of have this mindset that in terms of timing, the O's are quicker. They're going to enable an employer to have the services of a qualified candidate quicker than the EB1 categories. Let me see, I'm going to move to, okay, consular processing. So those of these individuals who are not in the US, they're going to have to apply. Once the process in the US is done, the petitions are approved, then the foreign national has to go to their embassy and apply for a visa, and that can be another process of some delay, and maybe providing evidence for the case again. Right now, this is the sort of a challenge because things are very slow. We do not know when people can get visas, or with the travel restrictions right now, the health-related restrictions. There's not flights. Certain countries have total shutdown on flights, so folks can't travel out of their countries. And so there are provisions for getting back to the executive order that said that for national interest waiver, they're going to make an exception, and for healthcare worker, they're going to make an exception. So I have been trying to apply for emergency appointments, and we're trying to work sometimes with senator offices that help, but there's not really much in terms of movement. Okay, so that's pretty much what I had for today. Let me see. I have some questions, and I'm gonna take them. I'm really glad that there's a few questions. Um, okay, one question was judging. How do you look at being on an editorial board? I think that we can spin the editorial board favorably. The idea is, how did you come to be selected for that editorial board? Who are the other people on this editorial board? What are their credentials and qualifications? And by define, like, really in very fine level of detail describing the kinds of things that you are doing, how the requests come in, what the process is, and then what the outcome is. So for sure, I mean, I think that's I would certainly include that in the judging criteria. Okay, good question, thank you. So somebody asked about salary. Do you submit wage surveys? If yes, how many? What do you argue when the salary is high but not high enough? So this is a tough area. I mean, uh, typically, like I do, like, for some of these positions, they do not easily fit into a cookie cutter box, because we have, like, a lot of these surveys that are from the Department of Labor, and the classifications are very sort of clear cut. And so if I have someone that's like an accountant, and I go to the Department of Labor related source, the survey, I go and find an accountant in a particular location and at a particular expertise level. I can look up what the general wage is, right? And if I can compare my client's wage and there's a difference, then yes, that helps me to submit that type of data on the wage. There is a difference between what nonprofits pay, let's say a nonprofit salary versus a for-profit salary. Then you have to look for specialized surveys and see, okay, in the nonprofit industry, what's the average for this position? What do I argue when the salary is high but not high enough? You have to really try to focus on number one, I would say, okay, if there's even a slight difference, why is that difference, right? Are there others in that organization that are making lower, and this one's making higher for their expertise? Others in the industry, the ones on the lower end, what kind of credentials do they have? And if this one's at the higher end of, like, the more experienced level, then that can help. Like, so within the prevailing wages, if this person is on the higher band, even though others in the industry are also at the higher band at the same level, you can argue that okay, they're not like an entry level person. They're like they're getting a higher level of a salary in comparison to maybe others with the same level of years of education and work experience. I can think on that, and if you want to email me separately, I'd be happy to brainstorm. But that's all that comes to mind right now. Let's see now. Oh, that's interesting. It is very hard for a non-citizen to qualify for a Pulitzer, and okay, only U.S. So the question is, it is very hard for a non-citizen to qualify for a Pulitzer. Only U.S. citizens are eligible to apply for prizes in books, drama, music, with the exception of history category, in which the book must be a history of the U.S. Permanent residents are ineligible. Okay, that's interesting. I honestly, I don't know much about the eligibility criteria. This is interesting. So, I guess one would use alternative awards, and certainly, like, one could get like an expert opinion saying that maybe this level of achievement is equal to like a Pulitzer or something like that. I guess that's what I would think of. Next question, really nice question. Are there fads would a virologist focused on a previously obscure virus stand a better chance of obtaining a visa today than 6 months ago? I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that, the examiners are looking at the real world and real world problems and pressing problems, right? So 6 months ago, maybe no one cared about the coronavirus, but now folks are like, obviously we're in a hurry to find a cure. Like it's just a hugely, pressing situation. So if someone's got an expertise, they would certainly argue that you could have a lot of different areas like national interest. It could be if they're extraordinary ability, they would still have to meet the other criteria. But yes, I think that if they frame themselves as a virologist focused on a previously obscure virus, and then explain all the reasons why they have a lot of merit, and they're the leader in their field, they would still have to show that they're very, prominent. And if they can show that they're one of the leaders, then I think that overall their petition will get a favorable review. That's an area that I'm always trying to explain to my clients, tie the experience, craft, and portray the whole evidence in reference to something recent. So your examiner will understand and relate because they're looking at a lot of different petitions, and you have to make yourself stand out. So in that sense, yes, absolutely, it will help. All righty. Hey, hi. I have a question from a friend, Luis Victoria. How many letters of recommendation are required? So, that's a good question. I mean, there's not really any magic formula. You certainly have to look at quality versus quantity. I always say, get letters from people who really know you, right? So the first part of the letter is really the person is saying, okay, I myself am an expert in this field, and then I know the subject of this letter very intimately, and therefore I can offer this opinion, right? So those letters are very valuable. Or I have reviewed this person's profile and I determined that this person is extraordinary, okay? And then, it depends on how many criteria you're hitting, right, out of the 10. Like if, I always try to get even though if they're just very strong on 3, I try to throw in maybe 3 others that they may be weak on, but you never know. Some examiner might like evidence on the other factors. I would say at least 3, okay? At least 3 letters of recommendation. And we're talking about letters of recommendation from people that know our candidate, who is either an employer or a peer, and then you have separate expert letters that are from people that may not necessarily know the person intimately, but are experts in their field and can become familiar with the person and write a letter. So I usually try to put 2 of those. And then, so let's say a total of 5, but I would say between, let's say 5 to 10. If you have really good quality stuff, just, pile it on. I don't think I would cut off. I would add, if the person can get me 10, 15 letters of high quality, I would certainly highlight the ones that are from the people that have most stature. But then I would also add the others and maybe just kind of summarize them in a cover letter that, hey, we have 15 letters here that are by so and so, and we can consider them. But there's not really, I do not think there's any cutoff for how many are required. Okay, I would focus more on the actual first-hand evidence, right? The awards, the publications, the presentations, right? So you kind of fix on those first, and then the letters of recommendation kind of tie everything up. Okay, So not bad. We got through all the questions. Please, if you have more, please email them. We'll submit. We'll send you the slides and recording later. Let's see. Our next webinar will be next week. We're gonna talk about how to address delays in processing of immigrant and non-immigrant visas. We'll have some more. We'll have more description, like, so that, I mean, just to give you a preview, like, so there are things that we can do with the embassies or the USCIS that are designed to basically, it's like a customer service type of inquiry to expedite things that are slow. We can use like senators' offices to try to help us. And then if none of that works, we can file a civil lawsuit, like a federal litigation, to speed up a process. So those are the things that I will talk about next week on this seminar. Let me do, okay, so that's what I look like. And that's what I was before the pandemic. So I'll just leave that photo right now. And that's my contact info. I want to say again, thank you so much for joining. And these are some very difficult times. I know all of us do kind of miss the social interaction that we used to have before the pandemic. And these webinars are a good way to at least, reach out and have a sense of being connected. So, thanks for giving me this opportunity. I would hope that, you will email us, let us know if you have additional questions or ideas for topics. And stay safe, social distancing, and all those precautions that they're telling us. And I hope that we'll come through this soon and kind of go back to normal. Okay, that's all from my side. Thank you so much and take care. Have a good rest of the day.